Welcome to Amigurumi Basics Part 3. Today we're talking about crocheting in the round versus a continuous spiral, as well as an increase and a decrease for amigurumi. It's a lot, actually a lot to take in today, so let's get started. So first we're going to talk about the continuous spiral. It is the most common. Most amigurumi patterns, you're just going to do it. This is what they assume is going to happen. It's the easiest way to work your amigurumi, and simply put, it just means you don't do anything at the end of the round. So say your piece is 20 stitches, 20 single crochets a round. So you're going to single crochet 20 times, and then at the end, you just stop. For the next round, if it's another 20, you start in the next stitch, crochet 20 times around. It is very important to keep stitch markers. I personally like to put mine in the last stitch of each round, but that is a matter of preference. It is very easy to lose track of your round or track of your stitches. There's no indication as to where the round starts or stops. Everything's just continuously going in the spiral. The pros of the continuous spiral is, as I said, it's just easy. There's not much to do. You simply stop at the end of each round. The only cons, there's a couple, but one is that you can very easily lose track of your round, so make sure to use your stitch markers and count very carefully. Another con is if you were getting into color changes, it's hard to make things line up because there's always going to be a little jog from one round to the next. Because of that little jog, when you end your work, if you're not closing off like a full ball shape, if you have an open section at the end, say like a flower or a tube, there will be a little lump because the last stitch is going to be a little bit higher than the stitch from the previous round. So that little step is the only thing to really keep in mind when you're working in the continuous spiral. The other option, and there's more, I'm just discussing the two today, the two most common for me. This one is joining in the round. This is something you'd really only do if the pattern called for you to do it, but it's nice to know what your options are and why there's different things, what happens when you join in the round. So the way this works for join in the round, say you have your same 20, so you single crochet your 20 right up to the end. When you're finished the round, you actually slip stitch to the first stitch, the first one you made of that round, and then chain one. To start the next round, you would single crochet in the same stitch that the chain one is coming from. It's easier to keep track of your rounds because you'll always have a little bump where the round starts. The downsides for this is that you will have a visible seam where you've joined, and also it takes more work. It's an extra 1, 2, 3 steps. You had to slip stitch to the first one and then do a chain one and then work in that same stitch. So it's a few extra steps as opposed to a continuous spiral. The pros are if you're going to do color changes, you have less of a step. Things are going to line up nicer from one round to the next. Also, it's much easier to know when your round stops and starts because there's a little lump you need to make it to make everything even. So for amigurumi, for increasing, two methods that I'm going to talk about. One, which is the most basic that you can think of, is literally single crocheting 2 stitches in the same stitch. You've just added an extra stitch to the round. Easy to do, nothing fancy, all done. The second option is the invisible increase. It's supposed to make the stitches a little tighter and help a little bit with your stuffing not showing through. It's not one I've tried very often, but I'm going to, and I will let you know how I like it when I've tried it a bit more. For the invisible increase, you complete 1 single crochet in the front loop of the next stitch, and then a second single crochet through both loops of the same stitch. Not that much different. It likely will help a little bit, and I will keep you posted. To decrease in amigurumi, sometimes noted just as a decrease or a DEC, or single crochet 2 together. For this one, there's 3 different ways that I'm going to go over. I'm sure there's more that you can find. There's no shortage of different ways to perform the same stitches. The first of the 3 ways is by far the easiest. Yay! But it might not be the prettiest. Oh. For this, you are quite literally single crocheting 2 together. So you insert your hook through both loops of the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert your hook through both loops of the following stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. You've just taken 2 single crochet stitches and made them into one. Gonna be a little lumpy, not the prettiest, but it is by far the easiest. If you're just starting, I would start with this. Get used to it, and then once you're ready, move up to one of the other ones, which we'll talk about right now. So the invisible decrease, this might be the most popular. On occasion, I will suggest this be used in some of my patterns, but usually only if there's a lot of decreases happening in one area. For example, on the Yaramara Yahoo, his belly and his butt have a lot of decreases together to get the nice junk in the trunk, to get them to get the nice shaping for it. However, when you do decrease a few in a row, you really run the risk of having your stuffing show through. For that reason, in those cases, I would recommend the invisible decrease. Now this one is a little harder, but it is worth it. For the invisible decrease, you insert your hook through the front loop only of the first stitch. Don't yarn over. You're going to have to twist your hook a bit, but then insert it through the front loop only of the next stitch. Now you yarn over, pull through all the loops on the hook. A little tricky, so worth it. This invisible decrease will absolutely help you with your stuffing showing through. It will help keep the decreases tighter, and honestly, if you're looking to up your amigurumi game, this is one thing I would absolutely suggest using. If you find your stitches are a little loose or your stuffing is showing through on the decreases, this could help. And lastly, this is the decrease that I actually use myself. I tend to stitch really tight. My hands hate me for it, but for my decreasing, I insert the hook through the front loop of the first stitch, yarn over, pull through, insert my hook through both loops of the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, and yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. I find, for me at least, it gives me a nice tightness, it's fairly easy to do, and it doesn't leave a very noticeable lump either. So that was increasing, decreasing, joining in the round, as well as working in a continuous spiral. Thank you for joining me for Amigurumi Basics Part 3. Happy hooking!